When my daughter-in-law smiled and said, "We only invited people who mattered," I realized I had been paying for a life I wasn't allowed to stand inside. The words hung in the air of their living room, my son's living room, the one I'd helped furnish, and something inside me cracked so quietly that I don't think anyone else heard it. But I did. I heard it like glass breaking in slow motion. Let me back up. My name is Marian Holt, and for the last 5 years, I'd been what you might call a silent investor in my son's happiness. Not that he ever asked me to invest. Not directly, anyway. It started small, the way these things always do. A few hundred here for rent when Evan lost his job. 1,000 there when Sabrina, his wife, needed dental work. Then furniture for their apartment. Then groceries. Then car repairs. Then emergency funds. Then routine funds. Then just funds. I'm a widow. My husband died 7 years ago, leaving me comfortable but not wealthy. I worked as a bookkeeper for 32 years, so I know numbers. I know how to stretch a dollar, and I know when someone else isn't even trying. But Evan was my son, my only child. And when your child needs help, you help. That's what mothers do, right? That's what I told myself every time I transferred money into their account, every time I paid a bill they'd forgotten, every time I showed up with groceries because they were so busy. I thought I was building a bridge between us. I didn't realize I was building a wall. It was a Thursday afternoon in October when I stopped by their house in Brookhaven Ridge. I'd texted Evan earlier that morning, asking if I could drop off some things I'd picked up for them. Dish towels, actually, because Sabrina had mentioned theirs were worn out. I know. Dish towels. But that's how it was between us. I listened for the small things, the little complaints, the passing mentions, and I tried to fix them. I tried to matter. "Mom, hey," Evan said when he opened the door. He looked surprised, which was odd because I'd texted. He was wearing a shirt I didn't recognize. Expensive, judging by the fabric. His hair was freshly cut. He looked good. Happy even. "What are you doing here?" "I texted you this morning," I said, holding up the bag. "The dish towels?"
"Oh, right. Yeah, come in."
The house smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. Sabrina was always burning those expensive candles I'd never buy for myself. I walked into the living room and immediately noticed the photos. They were everywhere, new frames on the mantel, the coffee table, even one large canvas on the wall. Professional photos. Beautiful photos. Evan and Sabrina dressed in elegant clothes, surrounded by flowers, laughing, kissing, holding hands. Wedding photos. My chest tightened. "What? When did you take these?" Sabrina appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, one of the old ones, ironically. She saw me looking at the photos and her smile flickered. Just for a second. Then it returned, bright and brittle. "Oh, Marianne, I didn't know you were coming over." "The dish towels," Evan mumbled, taking the bag from my hands. "When did you take these photos?" I asked again, my voice steadier than I felt. Sabrina glanced at Evan. Something passed between them, a look I couldn't quite read. "Last month," she said lightly. "We had a little ceremony. Very small. Just close friends and family." The room tilted slightly. "A ceremony. It was really last minute," Evan added quickly. "We just decided to do something intimate instead of a big production." I stared at my son, at the man I'd carried, raised, sacrificed for. "You got married." "Yeah." He rubbed the back of his neck. "We were going to tell you."
"When?"
"When were you going to tell me?" Sabrina stepped forward, her voice taking on that patient tone people use with children or the elderly. "Marianne, we didn't want any stress. You know how wedding planning can get. We just wanted it to be simple and easy." "I would have come," I heard myself say. "I would have. I'm your mother, Evan." "I know, Mom. It wasn't personal." But it was personal. It was the most personal thing in the world. I looked around the room again, really looked. The leather couch I'd helped pay for. The entertainment center that had been on my credit card. The artwork on the walls, the rug under my feet, the lamp in the corner. All purchased with my help, my money, my belief that I was building something with them. "Who was there?" I asked quietly. "Just a few people," Evan said. Which people? Sabrina's smile tightened.
Friends.
Close friends. People we see all the time.
And me?
Your mother? I'm not someone you see all the time. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my son struggle for words, watched his wife's expression shift from discomfort to something harder. Finally, Sabrina spoke. Marianne, you have to understand. We only invited people who matter to our daily lives. People who are really involved, you know? We wanted it to feel genuine. People who matter. The words landed like stones in my stomach. I stood there in their living room, a room I'd furnished, and realized I'd been buying my way into a family that didn't want me there. I'd been so busy being useful that I'd forgotten to check if I was wanted. I see, I said softly. I should go. Mom, don't be like that. Evan started, but I was already moving toward the door. I drove home in a daze. I don't remember the route, don't remember stopping at traffic lights or turning onto my street. I only remember sitting in my driveway, staring at my steering wheel, and feeling something shift inside me. Not anger yet. Not even hurt, really. Just clarity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a notepad, and I did what I do best. I ran the numbers. 5 years of financial help. I started listing everything I could remember. The rent payments when Evan was between jobs, $8 for 100 over 7 months. The dental work for Sabrina, $2, 200. The furniture for their first apartment, $3, 800. The security deposit for the house they were in now, $2, 500. Car repairs, $1, 600. Medical bills, $900. Groceries, gas money, utilities during tight months, conservatively another $4,000. Emergency funds, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, unexpected expenses that somehow always became my responsibility. By 2 in the morning, I documented $31,700 in direct financial support. $31,700. If you're watching this and thinking about your own family, your own relationships, I want you to ask yourself something. If you disappeared tomorrow, would they miss you? Or would they miss what you provide? It's a hard question. Trust me, I know. But it's an important one. And if this story is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button. You're not alone in this, and neither am I. The number stared back at me from the screen. I hadn't been helping my son through rough patches. I'd been subsidizing a lifestyle they couldn't afford, creating an expectation that I would always be there to catch them, always be there to pay. And in return, I got dish towel requests and exclusion from the most important day of their lives. People who matter. I closed my laptop and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, feeling something new moving through me. Not anger, not yet. Resolve. Cold, clear resolve. 3 days later, my phone rang. Sabrina. Hey, Marianne, she said, her voice tight. I hope you're doing well. I waited. So, we have a tiny situation. Our landlord is being ridiculous about the rent. It's only a few days late, but you know how some people are. We're just waiting for Evan's paycheck to clear, but in the meantime, we're getting these aggressive notices. I was wondering if you could help us out? Just this once. We'll pay you back when everything clears. Just this once. I'd heard that phrase 47 times in 5 years. No, I said.
What? No.
I can't help you with that. There was a pause. Marianne, it's only $1,200. The landlord is threatening eviction. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Are you seriously saying no right now? After everything she stopped herself, but not soon enough. After everything you've what, Sabrina? Nothing. Never mind. I just thought you'd want to help your son avoid being homeless. Something in her tone, that edge of manipulation, that assumption of guilt, finally ignited the anger I'd been holding back. I only help people who choose me, I said calmly. People who matter to their daily lives. I'm sure you understand. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but I felt more solid than I had in years. The phone rang again immediately. I silenced it. It rang 4 more times in the next hour. I ignored each call. The real surprise came 2 days later when Evan and Sabrina showed up at my door. Not alone. With them was a man I'd never seen before, middle-aged, wearing business casual clothes and carrying a leather folder. "Mom, we need to talk," Evan said, pushing past me into my house. "Who is this?" I asked, looking at the stranger. "This is Mark Vance," Sabrina said, her voice dripping with false concern. "He's a family consultant. We've been worried about you." "Worried about me?" Mark extended his hand. I didn't take it. "Mrs. Holt, your family has expressed some concerns about your recent behavior. They care about you very much and want to make sure you're okay." "My recent behavior?" Evan stepped forward, and I barely recognized the look on his face, a mixture of concern and calculation that made my skin crawl. "Mom, you've been acting strange. Refusing to help us with basic things, hanging up on Sabrina, isolating yourself. We're concerned about your judgment." "My judgment?" "You're getting older," Sabrina added gently. "Sometimes people don't realize when they start to decline. Mentally, I mean. We just want to make sure you're safe and capable of managing your affairs." The full picture snapped into focus, so clearly it took my breath away. They weren't here to reconcile. They weren't here to apologize or acknowledge what they'd done. They were here to take control of my finances, of my life. They'd brought a consultant to make it look official, to make it look like concern instead of what it was, a hostile takeover. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom, please," Evan started.
Get out
"Of
my house."
Mark set his folder down on my coffee table. "Mrs. Holt, if you just look at these papers." Touch that folder again, and I'm calling the police. Sabrina's mask finally slipped. "You're being completely irrational. We're trying to help you." "You're trying to help yourselves," I said, my voice rising. "You're trying to access my accounts because I stopped funding your lifestyle. This isn't about my well-being. This is about your rent." "That's not fair," Evan said, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "You excluded me from your wedding. You told me I didn't matter. And now, because I finally accepted that truth and stopped paying for the privilege of being dismissed, you show up with papers and accusations of mental decline? Get out."
Now.
They didn't move fast enough, so I picked up my phone and dialed 911. I didn't press call, but I held it where they could see it. Mark Vance grabbed his folder. Sabrina's face went red. Evan looked at me like he didn't know who I was. "You're making a mistake," Sabrina said as they headed for the door.
No. Irraplia.
"I'm correcting one." The door closed behind them. I turned the deadbolt. Then I went to my bedroom, pulled out the old landline phone I'd kept for emergencies, and called a locksmith. The locks were changed by 6 o'clock that evening. But changing locks wouldn't be enough. I knew that. They'd shown their hand, and people don't just drop plans like that. They'd escalate. So I escalated first. The next morning, I drove to Haven and Calder Law offices in downtown Brookhaven Ridge. I'd found Mr. Calder through an internet search for elder law attorneys with experience in financial exploitation cases. His office was modest but professional, and when I explained my situation, he didn't look surprised. "This is more common than you'd think," Mr. Calder said, taking notes as I spoke. "Adult children who've become financially dependent on elderly parents sometimes resort to extreme measures when that support is withdrawn." "I'm not elderly," I said. "I'm 63. He smiled slightly. "In legal terms, you're protected under elder abuse statutes. That works in your favor. Tell me about this consultant they brought." I described Mark Vance and the folder of papers. Mr. Calder's expression darkened. "They were likely trying to get you to sign a power of attorney or some form of financial guardianship paperwork. If you had signed, even under pressure or confusion, it would have given them legal control over your assets." "Can they try again? Through the courts?" "They can try. They'd need to prove you lack capacity to manage your affairs. But Mrs. Holt, from talking to you for the last 20 minutes, I can tell you that you're articulate, rational, and clearly capable. Still, we should be proactive. I recommend you undergo a voluntary cognitive evaluation. Get ahead of any claims they might make." "You think they'll make claims?" "I think they'll do whatever they need to do to regain access to your financial support." People rarely accept boundaries gracefully when they've been enabled for years. If you've ever dealt with manipulative family members or toxic relationships, you know how isolating it can feel. How much you question yourself. If this story is helping you feel less alone, please leave a comment below. Share your experience. Sometimes just knowing others understand makes all the difference. Mr. Calder was right to prepare me. Within a week, I started hearing whispers. My neighbor, Nora Whitfield, mentioned it first. Marianne, she said, catching me as I was getting my mail. I don't know how to say this, but I ran into your daughter-in-law at the grocery store yesterday. She seemed very concerned about you. She said you've been having some memory problems? I felt my face flush. I'm not having memory problems. I didn't think so, Nora said quickly. You seem sharp as ever to me. But she was telling everyone in the checkout line. The cashier, the people behind her. She made it sound quite serious. They were building a narrative, creating witnesses. If this went to court, and I was increasingly certain it would, they'd point to these conversations as evidence of their concern, as proof that they'd tried to help before taking legal action. Nora, I said carefully, if anyone else asks you about me, I'd appreciate it if you told them the truth. That I'm fine. That I'm managing my life just as I always have. Of course, she said, and then added softly, my sister went through something similar with her son. He tried to have her declared incompetent so he could access her retirement funds. It's more common than people realize. What happened? She fought it. Won. But it took 2 years and cost her almost everything, financially and emotionally. I'm sorry you're going through this, Marianne. That conversation stayed with me. 2 years. I couldn't imagine battling my own son for 2 years. But I also couldn't imagine surrendering my autonomy, because he and his wife had decided my money was theirs by right. The following Tuesday, I had my cognitive evaluation with Dr. Elaine Morris. She was thorough, memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about my daily life and decision-making processes. It took 3 hours. Mrs. Holt, she said at the end, I can tell you definitively that you show no signs of cognitive impairment. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning skills are strong. You're fully capable of managing your affairs. Can you put that in writing? I'll have a formal report ready by Friday. That report would become one of my most valuable possessions. But even with documentation of my competence, I wasn't prepared for what came next. 6 weeks after I'd changed my locks, I received official papers. Evan and Sabrina had filed a petition for guardianship, claiming I was unable to care for myself due to diminished mental capacity. I sat in Mr. Calder's office, reading through the allegations. They claimed I was paranoid, irrational, isolating myself from family. They said I'd become financially irresponsible, making poor decisions with my money. They cited the consultant visit as evidence of their good faith attempt to help me. They're lying, I said flatly. I know, Mr. Calder replied. But lying isn't illegal in family court. We need to prove they're lying, and we need to show their true motivation. Tell me, do you have documentation of the financial support you've provided over the years? I have bank statements, transfer records, receipts.
Good.
That's very good. We'll use that to establish pattern and motive. The hearing was set for early December at Oakwell Family Court. I had 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to live with the knowledge that my son was actively trying to strip away my independence. Those 6 weeks were the loneliest of my life. The calls stopped completely. No more requests for money, no more casual check-ins, no more anything. I was being iced out, partly as punishment, partly as further evidence of my isolation. They could claim in court that I'd cut them off, that I was withdrawing from family relationships. But I wasn't entirely alone. Nora started inviting me to her book club. Mr. Calder called weekly to update me on strategy. Dr. Morris sent me her report along with a note saying she'd be happy to testify if needed. These small connections kept me anchored. Still, there were dark nights when I questioned everything. Had I been too harsh? Should I have just kept helping them, kept being useful, kept my place in the margins of their lives? Wouldn't that have been easier than this battle? But then I'd remember Sabrina's smile when she said, "People who matter," And I'd remember that easy isn't the same as right. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully, professional, but not overly formal. I wanted to look capable, stable, unremarkable. Mr. Calder met me in the courthouse lobby. "Remember," he said, "stay calm. Answer questions directly and don't elaborate unless asked. They'll try to paint you as emotional or irrational. Don't give them ammunition." "I understand. And Marianne, you're doing the right thing." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Patricia Reeves presided, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor. Evan and Sabrina sat with their attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Ms. Bradshaw.
They didn't look at me when I entered.
Ms. Bradshaw went first, painting a picture of concerned family members watching a beloved mother and mother-in-law decline. She described the wedding exclusion as a misunderstanding, claimed they'd tried repeatedly to include me in their lives, characterized my refusal to help with rent as evidence of impaired judgment. "Mrs. Holt has always been generous with her family," Ms. Bradshaw said. Her sudden refusal to help during a genuine emergency, combined with paranoid behavior and accusations, raised serious red flags about her mental state. Then Sabrina took the stand. She was good. I'll give her that. Tears at just the right moments. A trembling voice when she described how worried they'd been. She made it sound like I'd shut them out without cause, like they were victims of my inexplicable cruelty. "She changed her locks," Sabrina said, dabbing at her eyes. "We couldn't even check on her. We were terrified she'd hurt herself or have a medical emergency, and we wouldn't know." "And prior to these recent changes," Ms. Bradshaw asked, "how was your relationship with Mrs. Holt?" "We were very close. She was always there for us. She helped us through so many difficult times. That's why this change was so shocking. It wasn't like her at all." When it was Mr. Calder's turn to cross-examine, he stood slowly. "Mrs. Holt, you said your mother-in-law was always there for you. Can you quantify that support?" Sabrina blinked. "Quantify?"
Yes.
"How much money has Mrs. Holt given you and your husband over the past 5 years?" I don't keep track of exact amounts." "Would you say it's more than $10,000? "Maybe. She wanted to help us." "More than 20,000? "I'm not sure." Mr. Calder approached the bench with a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Mrs. Holt's financial records into evidence. They show direct transfers and payments totaling $31,700 over a 5-year period." The judge took the document, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Holt," Mr. Calder continued, "you were excluded from your son's wedding. Is that correct?" Sabrina's face tightened. It was a small ceremony. How many people attended? About 40.
40 people.
But not the groom's mother. "Did you tell Mrs. Holt why she wasn't invited?" It was complicated." "Did you, or did you not tell her that you only invited people who mattered?" The courtroom went very still. I might have said something like that, but it was taken out of context. What context makes that statement acceptable to say to someone who has given you over $30,000? "Objection," Ms. Bradshaw said. "Argumentative." "Sustained," the judge said, but I could see her making a note. Evan's testimony was worse. He couldn't maintain eye contact. He stumbled over his answers. When Mr. Calder asked him directly how much money I'd given them, he admitted he hadn't kept track, which made him look either dishonest or irresponsible. "Mr. Holt," Mr. Calder said, "did you bring a consultant named Mark Vance to your mother's house?" "We were trying to help her." "What were Mr. Vance's credentials?" He specializes in helping families." "Did he have any medical training?" "I don't know." "Did he have any legal authority to evaluate your mother's capacity?" "No, but did you bring him to your mother's house with the intention of getting her to sign papers giving you control of her finances?" Evan's lawyer objected again, but the damage was done. The pattern was clear. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on steady legs. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and felt a grief so deep it almost took my voice. But I pushed through it. Mr. Calder asked me to explain the financial support I'd given. I did, calmly and clearly. He asked about the wedding exclusion. I described it without emotion, just facts. He asked about the consultant visit. I explained what had happened and what I'd understood their intention to be. Then he asked the question we'd prepared for. Mrs. Holt, why did you stop providing financial support to your son and daughter-in-law? I looked at the judge. Because I realized I wasn't helping them. I was enabling them. And more than that, I realized they didn't want a relationship with me. They wanted a relationship with my bank account. I wasn't abandoned when I stopped paying, Your Honor. I was revealed. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow. Ms. Bradshaw tried to paint me as vindictive in her cross-examination, but I stuck to the facts. Yes, I was hurt by the wedding exclusion. Yes, I decided to stop financial support. No, that didn't make me irrational. It made me someone who'd finally learned the difference between love and transaction. Dr. Morris testified next, presenting her evaluation. She was unequivocal. I showed no cognitive impairment whatsoever. If you've stayed with me this far in the story, thank you.
Seriously.
These are hard truths to face, about family, about boundaries, about the price we sometimes pay for other people's comfort. If this story has moved you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not alone. Judge Reeves took only 20 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was stern. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today, she said. I find no credible basis for the claim that Mrs. Mary Ann Holt lacks capacity to manage her affairs. The evidence suggests a competent woman who made a difficult but rational decision to establish boundaries with family members who had become financially dependent on her. The petition for guardianship is denied. Evan's face went white. Sabrina grabbed his arm. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm troubled by what appears to be an attempt to manipulate these proceedings for financial gain. I'm ordering that the petitioners pay Mrs. Holt's legal fees, and I'm warning you both that any further attempts to harass or manipulate Mrs. Holt could result in restraining orders or more serious legal consequences. We're adjourned. I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. I'd won.
My autonomy was intact.
My life was still mine. Evan and Sabrina left quickly, whispering urgently with their attorney. They didn't look back. Mr. Calder squeezed my shoulder. You did beautifully, he said. Thank you, I managed. For everything. You did the hard part. You stood up for yourself. That's not easy, especially with family. I drove home alone. The house was quiet when I walked in, the same quiet that had felt so heavy 6 weeks ago. But now it felt different. Not lonely. Peaceful. I made myself tea and sat in my living room, looking around at the space I'd built for myself. The books I'd chosen. The furniture I'd purchased. The life I'd created, not as an accessory to someone else's needs, but as a complete person in my own right. My phone rang once that evening. Evan's number. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. The days that followed were strange. I kept expecting some crisis, some final confrontation. But there was nothing. They were simply gone. I'd called their bluff, proven they couldn't take what wasn't theirs, and they'd moved on to whatever solution didn't require my participation. Part of me grieved. I'd lost my son, or at least the version of him I'd thought I had. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly suffocating under the weight of their expectations, felt free for the first time in years. Nora invited me to join her book club officially. I said yes. I started taking watercolor classes at the community center on Thursdays. I booked a trip to Vermont to see the fall foliage, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had because there was always someone who needed something more urgent. 3 months after the court hearing, I saw Evan at the grocery store. We turned a corner at the same time and came face to face. He looked tired. Older, somehow. Mom, he said quietly. Evan. How are you? I'm well. You? We're managing. He shifted his weight. Look, I wanted to say,
I'm sorry. For all of it.
You were right. About everything. I waited. Sabrina and I are in counseling. Working on stuff. And I'm trying to figure out how to be responsible for my own life instead of expecting you to catch me every time I fall. That's good, Evan. Really. I don't expect you to forgive me.
Or want to see me.
I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What we did. What I did. And I'm sorry. There was a time when an apology like that would have had me reopening the floodgates, offering help, trying to rebuild immediately. But I'd learned something important over these months. Apologies are easy. Change is hard. And I didn't owe anyone a relationship just because they'd finally acknowledged their mistakes. I appreciate you saying that, I told him. I hope you and Sabrina figure things out. Maybe sometime we could have coffee or something? Maybe, I said. When you're further along in your counseling. When you've learned to stand on your own. He nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. We parted ways there in the grocery store, and I continued my shopping without the weight I'd carried for so long. I might have coffee with my son someday. Or I might not. But it would be my choice, made from a place of strength rather than obligation. That night, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset and thought about everything that had happened. About the version of myself who would have done anything to maintain connection, even toxic connection. About the wedding invitation that never came. About the words, people who matter, that had shattered something in me, and in shattering it had somehow set me free. I used to think being chosen meant being needed. I used to believe that love was measured in how much you could give, how useful you could be, how many problems you could solve. I thought that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, I would finally be valued. But real love doesn't have a price tag. Real family doesn't require you to purchase your place at the table. Real relationships are built on respect and reciprocity, not financial transactions and emotional manipulation. I wasn't abandoned when I stopped paying. I was revealed. And so were they. And now, sitting here in the peace I'd fought so hard to claim, I finally understood the difference. Being chosen doesn't mean being needed. It means being respected for who you are, not what you provide. It means being valued when you have nothing left to give. It means showing up for someone because you want to, not because you want something from them. I'm 63 years old. I have a comfortable life, good friends, new hobbies, and plans that belong entirely to me. I have a son who might one day understand what he lost and what I gained. And I have myself whole, autonomous, and finally free. That's what matters. Not people who use you. Not relationships built on transaction. Not love that costs everything and gives nothing back. Just peace. Hard one. Carefully guarded, absolutely invaluable peace. And if I've learned anything from this experience, it's that peace is worth fighting for. Your boundaries are worth defending. Your life is worth living on your own terms. And sometimes, the family you deserve is the one you build for yourself, one genuine connection at a time. To everyone watching who's struggled with toxic family dynamics, with manipulation disguised as love, with the guilt of setting boundaries, you're not selfish. You're not cruel. You're not wrong. You're surviving. You're choosing yourself. And that choice, painful as it is, might be the most loving thing you ever do. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your experience. And remember, you matter. Not because of what you can give or do or provide, but because you're here. Because you exist. Because you're worthy of respect and genuine love. That's the truth I wish I'd known 5 years ago.
But I know it now.
And knowing it has changed everything.